Okay, good morning, party people. It is July 1st. I cannot believe it's July. Oh my God. Okay, so for our daily reading today, we are in the Old Testament. So today we read Genesis 39:40, 1 Samuel 27:28, John, of course, my words in red, 15:16, Revelation 3:4, Psalms 43:44, and Proverbs 12. Okay, so that's my daily soak in the Word. Okay, so today we are back in the book of Revelation. We are in chapter 11. So we're continuing with the two witnesses, right? So what we're seeing here, for those of you that have not seen any of my previous videos on Revelation, I encourage you to go back. I've got a lot to cover today, some really cool stuff. I'm super excited. But remember, book of Revelation is a vision that God gives the Apostle John. Jesus appears to him, and it appears to be in physical form. And after he's, sorry, I'm trying to fix this. After he's having this time in the physical realm on the island of Patmos with Jesus, there's a season where he's brought up to heaven and he sees the rest of this vision in the heavenly realm, right? And he's not just anywhere in heaven, he's in the throne room of heaven. And so he's describing throughout the book of Revelation his experiences there and what he's seen. And again, he's trying to describe this in a first century, mind. For some of us, because of our movies and the things that we are exposed to, it would be much easier and for us to explain it. But that makes it all the more pure. I mean, it's just very raw description of what he's seen. All right. So now what we've already gone through a bunch of things. We saw the scroll in the hand of the Father that Jesus took from the Father. It was sealed with 7 seals. We saw the 7 seals being opened in the beginning of the book of the tribulations and the woes. And then we saw the 7 trumpets that were inside the scroll, right? So now he's seeing these two witnesses. So I'm going to read to you what from the beginning of chapter 11 what he's witnessing. And we've already covered most of this. I'm going to pick up probably in around verse 10 or 11. But I wanted you to get to hear the whole thing all together. So then it says, Then I was given a reed like a measuring rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise and measure the temple of God, the altar and those who worship there, but leave out the court which is outside the temple, and do not measure it, for it has been given to the Gentiles, and they will tread the holy city underfoot for 42 months. And I will give power to my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy 1,260 days clothed in sackcloth. Okay, we've already covered all of that. The 2 time frames, the 42 months and the 1,260 days, the commentaries all agree that's the first 3.5 years of the tribulation. These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands standing before the God of the earth. And if anyone wants to harm them, fire proceeds from their mouth and devours their enemies. And if anyone wants to harm them, he must be killed in this manner. These have power to shut heaven so that no rain falls in the days of their prophecy. And they have power over waters to turn them to blood and to strike the earth with all plagues as often as they desire. So we've already covered this section in the last couple videos. This is the 2 witnesses they believe are Moses and Elijah. And so go back to the previous videos to see all that. So now it talks about them being murdered. When they finish their testimony, the beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit will make war against them, overcome them, and kill them. And their dead bodies will lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. So they're talking about Jerusalem there. And I covered this last video. Then those from the peoples, tribes, tongues, and nations will see their dead bodies 3.5 days and not allow their dead bodies to be put into graves. And those who dwell on the earth will rejoice over them, make merry, and send gifts to one another, because these 2 prophets tormented those who dwell on the earth. Okay, so that right there, what's really interesting about that is I've mentioned this before. Many of you kids have known nothing but technology that allows you to see everywhere all over the world all at one time. But like I've mentioned in the past, this could not have come true except for this generation, because my generation, I am the last year of the boomers, right? And so my generation and the early Gen Xers remember a time before CNN. There was a time when CNN started, I will never forget how everyone would just be glued to the TV, like when TV was first created. My mom used to tell me when TV was first created, they would all go to one family member's house because they were absolutely amazed that they could watch on TV somebody doing something, right? Like they had never seen anything like that. All they had was radio. So the same thing it happened when CNN began. When CNN began, that was the only thing there was. There wasn't all these different news organizations, but everyone was glued to the TV because you could see live all over the world, things that were happening right then and there. And so that is what this is describing. So while we take that for granted today, there was a season when this couldn't have come to pass. You know, in the past, with all these people that think that the end times were coming, well, there were things that technology wise that didn't exist. Like when they talk about here, the mark of the beast, whatever that mark is going to look like, there was a time in the past when there's no way you could control all people all over the world with a mark, right? Or see people dead in a street in one city from all over the world. So some of this is definitely could only happen from this, you know, from like our generation forward, right? So it basically says that so after they're killed, so God allows them to be killed, and then after they're killed, because of all the things that they were doing, all the plagues and all the condemnation and the standing for God and the crying out that Jesus is coming, this is what they will be doing. They're killed and everybody rejoices because the entire world is just so corrupted that at this point in time, you know, it's gonna, like I've said before, it's already becoming this way. It's very black and white. You're either on the side of Jesus or you're on the side of Lucifer, and it's going to be. I mean, it's not going to be like a mistake. These people are going to be choosing to follow him, and so then it talks about their excitedness because these people are killed, and it says that they're so excited and they're so celebratory they won't even allow them to bury them. So it says, then those from the peoples, tribes, tongues, and nations, so that's everybody, will see their dead bodies 3.5 days. So they're laying there dead for 3.5 days and not allow their dead bodies to be put into graves. And those who dwell on the earth will rejoice over them, make merry, and send gifts to one another, because these two prophets tormented those who dwell on the earth. Now that's so pathetic. Now it says they're resurrected. So now after the 3.5 days, the breath of life from God entered them, and they stood on their feet. And great fear fell on those who saw them. And they heard a loud voice from heaven saying to them, come up here. And they ascended to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies saw them. In the same hour there was a great earthquake, and 1/10 of the city fell. In the earthquake 7,000 people were killed, and the rest were afraid and gave glory to the God of heaven. The second woe is past. Behold, the third woe is coming quickly. So I'm going to do a second video on this idea of come up here and they ascended to heaven in a cloud. I'm going to do a second video on that today. But what I want to focus on real quick here at the end of this video is when it says that the verse 14, the second woe is past. Behold, the third woe is coming quickly. So what they're talking about there is if you go back to the trumpets, right? So if you go to chapter 9, so remember the first few trumpets, let me see, prelude to the 7 trumpets. So it looks like the first 4 trumpets are all dealing with the nature, right? Or even the heavens, things that are going on in the heavens. It's talking about the vegetation being struck, the seas being struck, the waters being struck, the heavens struck. But then in chapter 9, remember, when the 5th trumpet sounds, then you're dealing with things that are supernatural that are coming out of the bottomless pit. These are demonic entities of some kind. And so then it talks about them. And then so after that trumpet, the locust from the bottomless pit, in verse 12, it says, one woe is past. Behold, still two more woes are coming after these things. Okay, so that's where you see the first woe, is after the supernatural beings are released on the earth. And so then after those guys, this is all stuff we've already covered, you see the angels and the giant army of 200 million, right? And those guys, so then we see that, we see the chapter 10 with the little book, and now we're seeing the 2 witnesses. So after all those things, now it says the second woe is past. Behold, the third woe is coming quickly. Now the third woe we're going to see is when we talk in chapter 12, when we cover chapter 12, which describes Lucifer being thrown out of heaven. Because remember, right now, at this point, he still has access to heaven. He has the ability to go up there and accuse us, right? He's called the accuser of the brethren because he can come before the throne of God and accuse us. Well, he's going to be getting kicked out of heaven, and then he's only going to be on the earth. So just wanted to mention that. So I'm going to do a second video on this idea of the cloud, because there's some really powerful stuff here I want you guys to think about and to see. All right, so Jesus is coming. Read your Bible. Hold tight for number 2. Peace.